Well, to give you the professional answer, you're all right.
That just creates conflict. All right.
So my purpose is to transform the quality of the rest of your life in 20 minutes. Notice your reaction right there. I mean, if you went, wow, yes. Or you went, I don't know, 20 minutes, I don't know. What you believed about what I said will have an impact on what your experience is. Henry Ford said a wise saying. He said, there are people who think they can, and there are people who think they can't, and they're all right. So what that means is no matter what you think you're right about it. Is there anyone here who is willing to admit that you always think you're right? I'm telling you, you always think you're right. No. So sometimes you think you're wrong. Right?
Sometimes you know you're wrong.
Sometimes you're really right that you're wrong. Did you get that? So even when you think you're wrong, isn't it true that you think you're right that you're wrong? You think you're correct in your thought.
Of being wrong.
Yes.
Yes.
Let that sink in a little bit. Little tricky thought, but I think it's true. No matter what we think we're right about it, or we would not be thinking it. Now that gets worse when what we're thinking causes us to have any emotion. Because we use the intensity of our emotion as evidence of the truth of our thinking. The more upset I am, the more right I am, and others had better know it. I mean, how many times in the middle of being upset did you think you were wrong? Never. Because you're upset for a reason, and you know you're right about the reason, that's why you're upset. And it can happen, like you were saying, just in the moment of someone not listening. So how many of you have ever been irritated by someone interrupting you when you were talking? Yeah, I mean, all the time. How many of you ever had like an authority, a parent, a boss, say, in so many words, because I said so, which is basically telling you to shut up. How many of you ever had a dream about firing the boss? So if you said yes to any of those, then it's good that you're here. If you said no, then you probably were the boss. This is an opportunity to be different when you go out of the door than you were when you came in. All it requires is one thought planted in your mind forever. A wise teacher told me these kinds of thoughts are like sticks you put in the river. When you put a stick in the river, waves come off the stick and move every molecule of water from the presence of the stick to the end of the river. Okay? So how many of you had a conflict, disagreement, argument with someone in the last week? Anybody? How about in the last 24 hours? How many of you expect one in the next week? In the next 24 hours? Okay.
Trying to be positive now.
Well, I'm just speaking, what's real. It's going to happen, so let's get ready for it when it comes. Because we all have these things happen. I mean, in my shower, I have this plunger you pull to turn the water on, right, left, hot, and cold, and a little plunger you pull to send it up and down into the tub. And I, just because it's the way I believe is right, turn the water on, have it come through the shower, put my hand in, feel the water, feel the temperature, when it gets right to get in. My wife, for some reason, has the assumption that the water should come through the spout. So when she sticks her head in to feel her water, where's it coming from? After I took a shower. Hits her in the head. Rob, you left the water in the shower! We had that argument for so long. Who's going to be in charge of the shower head? Am I going to be married to one of those people who pushes the plunger down? It's about that kind of silly stuff. But we get emotional about it and it becomes a power struggle. My way or your way. So I don't know how this happened, but sometime I was in the shower, turning it off, and noticed what I was doing. And for the first time, I realized I was going to create an argument. And I realized that for just a simple little changing the plunger so that it went down in the tub, when my wife reached in and the water hit her hand, how did she feel?
You're the most wonderful person in that whole
She felt loved. And she does nice things when she feels loved. So how difficult was that? What did I have to give up?
Nothing.
I had to give up being right that she was wrong. And trying to prove that. There's a woman named Betty Rogers. She's buried in Coral Gables, Florida. She had inscribed on her tombstone these words, "See, I told you I was sick." She died to make a point. Gives new insight to the phrase being dead right, so be careful. So let me give you a little demonstration here. Oh, I go it this way. Well, wait, I got to do it one more time. Thought I had it set up a different way. Okay. So here you are with your ideas, and what do you believe about your ideas?
Right.
You're right. What percent of them? All of them. And here's the other person with their ideas. What do they believe about their ideas? What percent of them?
100%.
Okay, so this is called an argument. And who's listening?
Nobody.
How many of you are having an opinion about me getting water on the floor? And you're right about that, are you? Listen, I tried to check with a hotel, the restaurant here, about getting a towel or something, and they went, "Oh, it's just a carpet, doesn't matter." I'll tell you that. Probably not. So you want to get your ideas into them, and they want to get their ideas into you, but they're all full of their own ideas. So the question is, who's going to listen first? We always want them to, because we're right, and if they just listen to everything, it would be wonderful. But how often does that actually happen? Not very often. So here's the truth. Power flows to the person with the most information. The power to influence flows to the person with the most information. You want to change a person's point of view from theirs to yours? There's a requirement you have to meet. And that requirement is not that you understand them, you already think you do. It's that they experience being understood, and that's different. There's a difference between you having an accurate understanding of the other person's point of view and them thinking that you do. How many of you ever had someone tell you you don't understand? How many of you had children? Teenagers? And when they tell you you're not listening, what's your initial reaction to that? Yes, I am. You're the one who's not listening. And then we're into a struggle. So all you got to do is these three questions. The first one is, and it's on your handout so you don't have to remember anything. I can tell this is important because anytime someone's angry, they're telling you two things. They're telling you that it's important to them, and they're also telling you you don't want to hear it. If they thought you wanted to hear it, they wouldn't have to get angry to tell you. Their anger is a communication that they expect you to resist their point of view, and they have to put out more anger to try to break through your resistance to hearing. So the first thing you want to do is convince them they do in fact want to hear, which means you actually have to want to hear. So you say, you set your ideas aside, which are the right ideas, they're not going anywhere, going away. And you just ask the question, I can tell this is important, what is it you want me to know? Now when you tell someone who's all full of their ideas, what is it you want me to know, what are they going to do? They're going to go, yeah, there's this and this and this. Now immediately you're going to have opinions about their this and this and this, and in the past we all just immediately told them, interrupted them, said no, that's not true, da-da-da-da-da. And how often do they go, oh, thank you for pointing that out? Never. So you want to take what they gave you and give it back to them, repeat what they said. So there's this and this and this, and if you do it right, they'll go, yeah. Now what's the chances there's something more? 100%. So you ask the second question, is there anything else? Well, there's that and that. Oh, there's that and that. And this and this and this. Yes. And you're going to feel like you did a fantastic job, but what's the chance that there might be just a little bit more?
Pretty good.
Pretty good. So you always go for the third question, and that is that all? And I guarantee you, most of the time when you say that, is that all? They're going to say, well, because you asked. Which means you weren't going to get it. But because you demonstrated concern, interest, ability to communicate, they have a sense of your interest, maybe even feeling more respected by you. And you haven't agreed with anything, by the way. they're going to tell you the last this. How many times is the last this what it was all about?
Always.
But if you didn't go through the that and the that and the that and the this and this and this, you wouldn't have gotten to it. So right now is a very powerful moment. You already know everything you know. And now you know everything they know. Who's in the most powerful position? You are. Because you can allow these things to maybe mix a little bit. You can be extremely confident in your point of view and at the same time simultaneously humble that you don't know everything. Anyone willing to admit you don't know everything? So isn't it true, based on what we're talking about, that you believe you don't know everything, at the same time you believe that everything you think is right? So can you see those two things one of them is not true. So the one that's not true is that everything you think is right is actually right. Okay? So if you really conceive how powerful this thought is, it could be paralyzing. Oh my gosh, how do I know which thought I'm having is right and which thought I'm having is not? How would I know? It could be paralyzing. What I'm suggesting, maybe the only time you need to consider it, maybe a good time to consider it, is when someone's telling you that you're wrong. And even if you're not, even if you know you're right and you know they're wrong, having your initial response be to be curious about their point of view, to go through the questions, can help shift their need to be defensive. If we respond too quickly with why they're wrong and why we're right, we force them to defend their point of view, which is exactly what we're trying to get them to not do. And we take no responsibility for that. Immediately, when someone tells you you're wrong, as the first thing they say, you're going to defend your point of view. It's guaranteed. So I know that about me. I know that about others. So I don't want to trigger that in them. Now, some of you mentioned that there's this emotional wave that hits us sometimes at this moment, and that's true. There is an emotional wave that hits us in the middle of a conflict that causes us to forget any communication skill. So the first chapter in that book I'm giving you is about a model called Speed Through Stress in 5 Steps in 15 Seconds. Breathe, relax, reassure yourself, think positive, look for some humor. You want to practice that in the elementary school lessons in life so that when the graduate school lessons come, the importance in your relationships, that you can learn how to respond in a new way. Also at the top of your handout, speedthroughstress.com, there's a 20-minute video. This is all free. It's a video of me talking about getting shot in the center of my chest a few years ago and the 5 steps helping me deal with that circumstance. So hope you go take a look at that. Because dealing with that emotional wave is the first step in being able to even remember the first of the 3 questions. What is it you want me to know? Is that all? Is there anything else? But that's not sufficient, too. On the handout, there's listed 5 levels of a clear communication. Every communication involves these 5 parts. There's some facts, there's some thoughts or opinions about the facts, there's some emotion we experience because of our thoughts and opinions about the facts. All of that is right there. And it just flows like a waterfall. And because of the emotional intensity, there's some importance that's there. And that importance is because of our expectations, what we want. So the more intense a person's emotions, evidence of importance and of their need to be emptied out of their point of view before you're going to have any leverage to have any influence on them. So I was sitting in with the CEO and his leadership team, and I had been teaching this, and everybody seemed to kind of understand each other. But then the CEO and the CFO got into an argument. And they were just going back and forth, basically telling each other why the other one was wrong. And I had enough standing to interrupt. Now, when I'm going to facilitate this, I'm always going to pick on the authority to have them be the vulnerable person. So I turned to the CEO and said, I can tell how passionate you are about this. I can tell how important it is. I just want to make certain that there's no misunderstanding. Could you just take a moment to restate the CFO's points? He went, oh, yeah, thanks. He said, okay, so you're thinking this, and you're thinking this, and you're thinking this, and you're thinking this. And the CFO went, no. Not thinking any of that. That's not what I'm trying to say. And the CEO was like, whoa, really? Not this, not that? No. Oh, well, what are you wanting me to hear? So I want you to get someone in your mind who most likely is not going to want to hear whatever you have to say. Try to keep it to one. Okay. And I just want you to think about the next time you might have an interaction with them, what it is that they want you to know, that you probably know, but they repeat themselves about it. Because again, any time anyone's repeating themselves, it's because they don't think you got it. So you need to empty them out. And just focus on repeating, not just the 3 questions, but you want to listen for where they're talking on those 5 levels and where they're not. And repeating that. Now this may take a little while to integrate into your toolbox. How many of you learned how to drive a car using a stick shift? Anybody? Remember that was kind of challenging? You had to use all 4 limbs simultaneously. You had to have the clutch and the gear. How many of you kind of grind the gears a little bit when you're first starting and something like that? But how many of you were highly motivated to drive? And that was your opportunity and you were going to learn how to do it. And it took all your attention on those 4 things. Okay? And not very long, maybe a month, I don't know, a few weeks, you got to where you weren't thinking so much about driving, you're thinking about where you're going. Same thing with these. At first it's going to be, what's the first question? What comes after thought? So one thing you might do, how many of you interact with people on the phone? Anybody? Okay, great. Make copies of the handout and just have it sitting there next to the phone. And when you're talking to somebody, take notes on the handout of what they're saying and which category it falls into. And repeat back to them. And here's the key. Ask them the last question. Is that all? Meaning, do you think I understand? That's particularly important with customers. If you are giving an instruction to someone as a volunteer, don't ever ask them if they understood. Because their answer means nothing. That they say yes only tells you they're confident that their understanding is accurate. It says nothing about the accuracy of their understanding.
So you would ask them, what is it you understand that is your task?
No, I would be more tactful. I would say, sometimes what I say and what I mean aren't quite the same. It would help me if you just tell me what you heard me say.
You would repeat that?
Sometimes what I say and what I think may not be the same. It would really help me if you could tell me what you understood me to say. And if you get that far and they tell you some stuff, what's the chances it's all right? 0. So another trap is they do tell us what their understanding is. They're telling what their understanding is, not whether or not they understand. And we see where they got it wrong. We focus on that first. Don't do that. Focus on what they got right first. Reinforce that again. Yes, 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 yes. And take responsibility for what they didn't get right. This is just being tactful. This is just being respectful. It's this Jedi mind trick. These are not the droids you're looking for. Of course you want to understand.
So you take on responsibility at that point. Say, you got this right, you got that right. It's great. I don't think I explained what I meant to you.
Yes.
What I meant to
Yes.
not exactly that you think, but...
Yeah. And then I would even say, what do you think about that? See, that's a little different. It's not like, what did you understand? What do you think about that? Because what they tell me about what they think about it, one tells me what their understanding is, but it also tells me their opinion about it, because that's going to influence how they behave more than their understanding of what I want. And so that's good, valuable information. As a leader, we have a tendency to believe we are supposed to set the direction. We should solve the problems and tell people what to do. The problem with that is it deadens everybody else's mind. And so it's much better as a leader to bring the problem and ask what they think, because you find out where they're already going. And if they're going where you want them to go, how smart are they? Bravo, that's great. Let's go do that. Thank you for coming up with that. They don't have to know you already thought of it. If they don't, and they're going some different direction, what are they seeing you're not that leads them in that direction? Maybe there's something there that might be valuable. Maybe that's not a big enough risk for you to say no. Maybe let's go find out. Maybe I can work with that. But at least it gives you information about how to address whatever's going on. So every relationship we're in is going to have disagreements. And the more you're with someone, the more intense and emotional those disagreements can become. And we have just grown up in a culture that hasn't given us the tools for how to be more successful at handling those disagreements. I did marriage counseling for 30 years, hundreds and hundreds of couples. When they come in, they're not experiencing feeling loved. In fact, one will say, well, they don't love me for blah, blah, blah. And this one will go and say, well, they don't love me for blah, blah, blah. I'm so upset they don't love me. I'm just so hurt and angry they don't love me. And I'm over here thinking, oh, that's very interesting, because you wouldn't be hurt and angry if you didn't love them. So here's the person who's hurt and angry that you don't love them, and their hurt and anger is evidence of how much they love you. If they really didn't love you, they would have no emotion. Now, I can't tell them that because they're convinced that the other person doesn't love them. But I know they do. So I know it hasn't been lost. It's just been buried under a whole bunch of righteousness. Okay? My righteousness about how the plunger should go. And when you get through some of this stuff, not only do you get the experience of giving respect and love to more people at work and at home, you get to feel it more often. Sometimes my wife was very angry at me, and I came to realize that she loves me and sometimes she doesn't know it. And I started feeling it even when she wasn't. She passed away about 8 years ago, and what's fascinating to me is that even now, as I take a shower, I push the plunger in because it makes me feel loved. And I think we have the capability of being the person who can hold kind of the space of respect and valuing and loving even when other people have lost it. When they get upset and hurt and angry at us. For what? For not understanding. All you got to do is just set it aside a moment. Empty them out. Use those 2 models, the 3 questions, the 5 levels. It won't solve everything, but I guarantee you it's going to eliminate the majority of conflict in your life. Because conflict is because we're not experiencing understanding. We can still have differences, but it doesn't have to be a conflict. Okay? And when people feel your openness to their point of view, that is a requirement for them to have a mind that's open to yours. No one can be open to your point of view who hasn't experienced your openness to theirs first. So if I want to win the argument, I just know I gotta make sure they experience being understood. And I got to agree with as much as they can. Okay? Let's see if there's another thing here. The communication.html. There's a video of what I did here with the water glass. And there's also more models there, 6 stages in reaching agreement. How many of you know someone at work or somewhere that you think would have benefited by being here today? So let me caution you, don't go home or go to work and say, hey, you're the one who should have been there today. This was for you. How open are they going to be to that? No. So let me recommend you make these changes I'm suggesting to such a degree that other people notice and go, wow, what happened to you? And say only, oh, I watched a video or I heard a speaker. If they don't go, what speaker, what video, they don't want to know, don't tell them. But if they do, share it with them and then ask them what it is that they think about it. Because how many are you going to have an argument in the next week? In the next 24 hours?
So I have a question.
Sure.
My mother used to always say, when we were little and my little brother would be annoying or whatever, and argue, she'd always say, it always takes 2 to argue. So just ignore him. And I'm like, I'm losing it.
But he's wrong.
I'm losing it altogether. You make me crazy. But I got to be the one to ignore it. But, I was the oldest, so I had all that responsibility on me all the time. You're going to be the leader, so I'm going to be an example,
Yeah.
right? So,
Not sufficient to be enjoyable to do it. Those reasons.
yeah. So what about? So when I hear that thing about it takes 2 to argue, and now that I'm an adult, and someone's upset,
Well,
or 2 people are in a relationship.
Again, a person's upset.
The other person won't speak.
Yeah. Oh, well, that's a different deal. When they don't communicate at all, yeah, that's very hard.
How do you kind of...
You know, the only way I would recommend is you write to them. But what you have to write about is what you think they're thinking. Even though they're not saying it, you probably make a pretty good guess. Because that non-communication is, again, a communication you don't want to hear. Why should I say anything you don't even want to hear? So you've trained them not to be willing to risk talking to you. We all have. Now, it may not be personal. It may be other people have trained them that way too. Okay? And so there may be people you like who develop certain apprehensions in relationships, certain fears, certain worries, certain anxieties. And so they're going to bring them into the relationship with you. If you want to be in that relationship, then you're going to have to be willing to be the target and learn how to engage, because it's fundamentally always the same thing. How do you create in them an experience of being understood? And whatever little piece of the puzzle they'll give you, you're not in control of how they handle that. But I think the more we do that with people, the more those who can't move in that direction kind of disappear from our life, and the more those who can show up. Yes?
So how do you handle an instance where, to go back to the cop analogy, right? So you invite them to share. So what is it you want me to know? And they share that. And you ask the follow-up question. And you get to the end of it. Is that all? Now it's your turn to interject what you're thinking, right? Because there may be a difference. There may be
Of course.
variable between
Yeah, that's why you're having the whole conversation in the first place.
between what they're saying and reality.
Yes.
And their expectations. So how do you handle it if you try then to interject what you think is the medium?
Yeah.
They are rejecting that.
Yeah. So first off, I haven't given you all the models.
Okay.
You're moving into the 6 stages. Stage 1, as I understand you. Stage 2 is I acknowledge where we agree. So in your example, you're skipping stage 2. So you'd want to acknowledge everything that in an agreement. If you misunderstood, it's over there. When you go to stage 3, that's when you get to say your stuff. But what I'd recommend you learn how to do, and it's more challenging, is learn how to do it in the form of questions rather than statements that help them look at something. And the respectful thing is to assume they've already thought what you want them to think and decided it's not good for some reason. So you want to find that out. Just saying it again usually doesn't produce that result. So take a look on that communications page for the 6 stages and practice that some. Because again, there are people who are dedicated to the destruction of their own life and every relationship they're in. You know, and they may be in your family and they may be at work. And none of this is going to help with any of them. But you will feel good about you having done everything you could. And you know, if it's a couple, you may need counseling. Anything else? Debbie? Yes.
Face-to-face communication is so different these days. Sometimes it doesn't happen. And in the world of electronic communications, people will say things that they would never say to your face. And that creates a lot more conflict than the original conflict.
Yeah, that's true. Again, they're saying that because they don't feel safe saying it to your face.
Yeah.
That's one way. So that tells me I need to do something to help them feel safer. The other thing is that it's real easy when you do text and email to hear tone that wasn't in it.
Exactly.
And so you hear it as almost a different message, and you've got the evidence. So the only thing I would recommend is as soon as you notice any of these communications moving out of the world of logistics and into differences of opinion, you have to get on the phone or you have to get in person with them.
Yeah.
You don't respond back in email. That just adds fuel to the fire, you know. And the big thing is to learn, isn't that person the way they are, and wouldn't they be that way whether you're there or not? It's not personal. It's difficult, not personal. And when you can feel that, then you can respond in a way that creates the opportunity for more collaboration and work on things. But again, some people are never going to be able to make that move, and that becomes a whole other issue for how to handle.